In this video, we're going to talk about lobsters. Now, for a lot of us, the first thing that comes to mind is, a fancy dinner. But what if I told you there's a creature behind that meal with a life that can span a whole century? A life that's full of brutal fights, incredible journeys, and some really, really weird biology. So, let's dive in. Okay, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get a proper introduction to the lobster. Then, we'll get into their amazingly long lives. After that, we'll check out their surprisingly aggressive social lyre. And we'll wrap things up by looking at where they are around the world and hitting you with 5 mind-blowing fast facts. Alright, let's get right to it with our first section, Meet the Lobster. We're going to start with what you think you know, and then peel back that shell to see what this curious crustacean is all about. Yeah, this is probably the image you have in your head, right? Bright red on a plate, ready to go. But this is the very, very end of a long, long story. To really get where a lobster is, we gotta go way back to the beginning, when it's alive and kicking on the ocean floor. So, what is a lobster technically? Well, it's a crustacean. It belongs to a group called Arthropoda. Now, that sounds super sciencey, but it just means they have jointed legs. They don't have a backbone like we do, instead, they've got this tough outer shell, an exoskeleton that protects them. And see those 10 legs? That also makes them decapods, which, you guessed it, literally means 10 feet. Okay, so now let's get into their incredible life story in section 2. We're talking from a teeny tiny egg to a seasoned veteran of the seafloor, and believe me, the journey is pretty remarkable. And that story starts with a number that's just staggering. A single large female lobster can carry up to 100,000 eggs. She holds on to them under her tail for almost a year before they hatch. But as you're about to see, there's a very good reason she has so many, because the odds of survival are, well, not great. This chart here shows just how dangerous that journey is. When they first hatch, the tiny larvae just float around near the surface for weeks, which basically makes them an all-you-can-eat buffet for predators. The very few that survive eventually sink to the bottom. But get this, for every 50,000 eggs, only about 2, just 2, will ever make it to legal size. It's a brutal lottery. And what's interesting is that mating happens right after a female molts, when her shell is still soft and she's at her most vulnerable. But if a lobster does beat those incredible odds, it can live for an amazingly long time. We're talking potentially up to 100 years. The tricky part is, scientists can't tell their exact age, but we do know they never stop growing. They do this by molting, shedding their old shell, and every single time they do it, they pack on about 40% more weight. So, okay, they can live for a century. But what are those 100 years actually like? In section 3, we're climbing the social ladder, and you might be supposed to find out it's a life that's pretty much built on conflict. Which brings up a really interesting question, doesn't it? Are lobsters social? Do they hang out? Do they have buddies? The answer, well, it's not a simple yes or no. The reality is, for the most part, lobsters are lunars. They spend most of their time just hiding by themselves in little burrows on the seafloor. But when they do interact, it's usually all about competition. They don't team up. Instead, they fight it out to establish a pecking order, what we call a dominance hierarchy. And hey, this isn't just random brawling. There's a method to the madness. As this research from the Journal of Experimental Biology points out, these fights are really important. By constantly fighting over things like the best shelter, they create a stable social structure. It's not chaos, it's actually organized conflict. So, how does a lobster become a chief? It's actually pretty simple, if a little brutal. First, you get a confrontation. That leads to a contest, a fight. A winner emerges, and boom, they're the dominant one. And the perks are huge. The top lobster gets the best, safest burrows, and is way less likely to get kicked out by a rival. Basically, being dominant means either to be safe and secure. So we've seen the life of one lobster, right? Now let's zoom out a bit in section 4 and see where they fit into the global picture, both in the oceans and in our markets. As you can see from this map, you can find lobsters in oceans all over the planet, but check out that small red area off the coast of North America. That's the home of the American lobster, and that little spot completely dominates the entire commercial market. And this chart really puts that into perspective. Just 2 countries, Canada and the United States, control more than half of all lobster exports in the entire world. Canada by itself accounts for a massive 40%. It really shows you how concentrated that global trade is. Alright, it's time for our final section. Let's wrap up with a quick, high-energy round of 5 fast facts. Some of the absolute coolest and most surprising things about these creatures. Fact number 1, a lobster doesn't have one single brain. Nope. Instead, its nervous system is decentralized, with 15 different nerve clusters called ganglia spread all through its body. Pretty wild, huh? Number 2, their claws are not the same. They're actually specialized tools. They've got one big, heavy crusher claw for snatching open shells, and a smaller, sharper ripper claw that's designed for tearing up the food. Fact number 3, their blood is clear. It's this sort of grayish fluid that moves oxygen around from their gills. It only gets a tiny bit of color when it's exposed to the air. Fact number 4, they're kind of cannibals. See, after a lobster molts, it will often turn around and eat its own shed shell. It's actually a super smart way to recycle all that valuable calcium to help its new soft shell harden up faster. And for our last and probably most powerful fact, we're coming back to that absolutely insane number, 2 in 50,000. Those are the odds. That's the chance a single lobster egg has of surviving that crazy journey to become an adult. It's just an incredible testament to how tough they are. So I guess we'll just end on this thought. We've learned that these creatures can live for almost 100 years, that they navigate this violent social world just to survive, and that their journey to get here is against all odds. Knowing all of that, does it change how you see what's on the dinner plate? Alright, that is it for this video, everyone. Thank you for watching. Please make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video.